Hey, it's Paul with BuyTruckWheels.com. Want to do a kind of a basic commercial truck wheel class here. This is what I was taught about 20 years ago when I started selling wheels, when I didn't know anything, and just going to kind of go over the basics, some of the lingo when you're asked questions or you're looking for some information, what you need to know. So this is just a basic Alcoa 22.5 by 8 1/4 wheel. Now, it's a little hard to actually measure this, but when we're talking diameter and width, Johnny can kind of zoom in here. The width is only from inside your rim flange to inside rim flange. So if you're measuring the whole width, including your rim flange, that's incorrect. You're going to only want to go inside the rim flange to inside the rim flange, and that's where you get your 8 1/4. Same thing with diameter. Don't do from top all the way to top to bottom. It's kind of hard to measure, but it's actually inside the rim flange to inside the rim flange. So that's our diameter and width. The next measurement that's really common and important to know is called the bolt pattern. This might be called a PCD or bolt pattern, bolt circle, and that is from the middle of the stud across to the opposite stud. So this is a 10 lug, and if we measure that, it's going to come out to about 11 1/4 inches. However, this particular wheel is measured in metric, so it's 285.75 millimeters from stud to stud. So we would call that 10 on 285.75 millimeters. This is a hub pilot wheel, so you've got a few different styles of mounting. A hub pilot wheel has a flat bolt hole, as you can see, and would use a 2-piece flange nut with a washer. So the reason it's called hub pilot is this, the weight and all the centering is done on the hub. So this is a very tight, secure fit to your actual hub. Everything rests there, and then your lug nuts essentially just are securing the wheel in place. The other mounting style that you can have is called stud pilot. Some people might call it ball and seat. Some people might call it bud wheel. That's where the bolt hole will have a big bevel to it and actually be a larger diameter, and you would use a big round lug nut like that. So this one's obviously too big to go in there, but when you have the beveled bolt hole and the round lug nut sits in there, and that mounting system, the weight and the centering actually happens on the stud. That's why it's called stud pilot. So even though the bolt pattern may be the same, you really need to look at your mounting, the way that the lug nuts that are used to determine the correct wheel. This hub piloted system has been pretty much mainstream since around 2000, the year 2000. Any trucks made since then are generally going to be hub pilot. Before that, there was some hub pilot, but you also had mostly stud pilot wheels. When you're talking motorhomes, trailers, we kind of always just want to verify, because a lot of them were still using stud pilot, into the 2000s. But this is kind of your standard system. This pattern is your standard North American Class 8 bolt pattern. It can go bigger, is what we call like a European style wheel. Hub pilot may also be called unimount, unilug. There's some different names for it, but essentially it's all hub piloted. Now, since it is hub piloted, the next measurement we want to kind of hone in on is going to be called your hub bore. And that is essentially your diameter across from one side to the other of your hub. Now on this particular wheel, again, it's in metric, so it's going to be about 220 millimeters. So that's very important on a hub piloted wheel, because your weight and everything rests on your hub. Now again, kind of going from there, some other things is going to be, these are hand holes or vent holes. So generally on aluminum wheels, they will match the number of vent holes to lug holes. So it's a 10 lug wheel, 10 vent hole wheel, and they're usually situated in between your lug holes. Sometimes if you have an 8 lug wheel, generally it'll be 8 holes. If you go down to a 6-lug wheel, then that, you know, 6 vent holes looks kind of odd, so it might be 8 or 10, depending on how the manufacturer does it. But these are called vent holes. These have a different diameter. Some wheels are drilled straight in. Some wheels are drilled at this angle. So that kind of gives it a little different look, even though it might have the same diameter. It just depends on the angle that the wheel is actually drilled in at. So a lot of wheels will be drilled in parallel to the ground. Some will be drilled in kind of perpendicular to this angle here of the face. But so that's a vent hole or a hand hole. The next big difference between commercial wheels and your standard, you know, consumer, you know, truck wheels or car wheels is the term offset. And a lot of you know, truck guys or, you know, light wheels, the term backspacing is very widely used, where in the commercial wheels that's not really used that often. It's actually offset, or some people call it inset and outset. So how that is actually measured, if you can kind of come around here to the side, you find your direct dead center of the wheel, of the rim, and you would measure to the either inside or, so the...
You're talking about out here?
Yep, out here. So either the inside or the outside. So this would be your inset and this would be your outset. Now, I'm not an engineer, but that term is actually depends on which way you have the wheel. But for all intents and purposes, essentially find your dead center of the wheel, measure to the disc face, and you're going to get your inset and outset. Now, obviously, backspacing is a measurement you can take. If you were to kind of lay this down on the ground, find the floor here and measure to the inside of your disc face, that's going to be your quote-unquote backspacing. But in the commercial world, that's not really a measurement that's given by the manufacturer. So again, some more terms just to kind of talk about. Disc face, okay, so this is a disc wheel. When you say rim, that's actually this part up here where the tire mounts, because you know, back in the day, old school, that we would have a demountable rim, so it was just the rim and it would mount on a spoke hub. So this is a disc wheel, which adds a disc to the rim. So the disc face, then you have your rim, valve stem. So on dual wheels, the valve stem can really only go one way. Sometimes if you're going to put it on a drive, you can reverse it. And while we're kind of talking about that, we'll show you on a dual wheel, it's the same wheel, just spun around the other way. So if you've got a semi, you know, a standard Class 8, all 10 wheels would be the same, they're just spun around the other way. A lot of information happens down here on our roll stamp. Now, across manufacturers, you're going to get some slight different information, maybe the order that it's, you know, kind of displayed, but you should have your manufacturer. So this is an Alcoa, so we got Alcoa, it's forged. It's going to always have your max load. So if a wheel is going to be DOT stamped and certified, it's going to have to have all this information. So you're going to have your max load. It's given it in kilograms, 7,400 pounds. Max pressure, you know, 130 psi. Where it's made, the date code, and then this is June 20th of this year, 2025. Then you're going to have your part number, and then your size, and then your DOT stamp. So this is called the roll stamp. It's generally always on the deep side out here by the lip. Now, there might be couple manufacturers out there that I don't know about that put it somewhere else, but on aluminum wheels, it's always usually here on the outside. On steel wheels, it is usually somewhere here on the face. So if you're trying to identify a steel wheel and you're looking for a part number, kind of generally always look on the face somewhere. On an aluminum wheel, always look for that roll stamp on the back side. Just to kind of talk about some wheels in general. Wheels are made in the commercial side for specific applications usually. So that's why that load rating kind of comes into play. We get questions all the time about, you know, I want to run this tire, but why won't it work with this wheel? And so in the commercial space, generally the wheel and tire is designed to work in conjunction together. And So sometimes using a bigger tire for one reason may not work because of the limitations of the wheel, and vice versa. So when you're buying commercial wheels, you always want to make sure that the wheel and tire are going to work together the way that they're supposed to. So another kind of comment on your load ratings: forged aluminum wheels are very strong. They're very true, and generally the load rating is kind of based on the tire. So this wheel may be able to actually hold more weight, but the manufacturers usually realize that there's limitations to the tire, so they are going to make the wheel to match up with the tire and the load rating. And that's a lot of times why the vent holes have certain limitations to how the size that they can be. A lot of the heavier load wheels will have smaller vent holes. There's less metal cut out of the wheel, keeps more strength. You know, it's pretty straightforward. So and that's kind of lead me into my next point here about some of the modifications that people sometimes do to these wheels and why that may not be a great idea. So one thing that happens all the time with Alcoa wheels is they are shaved, quote unquote, shaved down to 22s. So this is Alcoa does not make 22-inch wheels, they make 22.5, but when guys want to run a more of a street tire on a dually, then they quote unquote shave them down. So what that means is this barrel part has to be shaved. Now it's a 1/2 inch, so it's a 1/4 inch on each side, you know, 1/4 inch all the way around. But what that will do is thin this out and kind of weaken the structure of the wheel. Now if you're putting it on a dually, it doesn't obviously need to carry as much, but anytime you alter the thickness of this metal, you know, it's gonna have some consequences, especially if the person is not doing it uniformly, you know, or they're heating it up, they're doing it too fast. Heating the metal up can degrade the temper on the aluminum. So we just always warn, if you're modifying the wheel, there is going to be risk. Same you know, occurs if you are going to enlarge these vent holes. Some guys want to do you know, a big hole, or they want to cut some different design. That's great. You know, I'm glad you want that look, but just beware, the more metal you take out of this wheel, the more strength, you know, goes with it. And also having any type of sharp corners creates stress spots. So for a semi, I would absolutely never recommend doing that. Making the holes bigger, you're really going to degrade the strength of the wheel by doing that. If you're putting on a light truck, obviously there's still a risk, but that truck doesn't nearly weigh as much, you know, as a Class 8.
Maybe show trucks can get away with
yeah,
that.
Yeah, show trucks, stuff like that. But just some of the things to look out for, and when people, you know, say that it's a milled wheel or a shaved wheel, that's actually where they're taking the material out. So this is, you know, kind of a general rim class. We wanted to kind of talk about some of the you know, language that's used. So if you're, you know, looking for a wheel and we ask you for some information, these should be pretty much all the terms. The other thing we kind of talked about, and I actually saw one the other day. So here's your rim flange. Here, as you're going to see, it's nice and rounded. It's got, you know, a lot of you know, mass to it. What will happen over time, you know, you run your wheels, you know, they could be on your truck for 20 years. The tire is going to always have friction against this rim flange. So over time, this can actually wear this material away and create a really sharp edge here. So I actually had a friend brought some wheels over, and I told him, I said, you know, we don't even really want to mount tires on that because it was so sharp. It's just going to cut that wheel. I looked at the sticker on the wheel and it looked like it was from the 90s. I could tell the wheel, but you know, the wheel's been around 30 years. You would expect that. So when you're inspecting your wheels, they may look okay if you've polished them up and kept them looking nice, but keep an eye on this rim flange if it starts to wear that material away. Now, again, this isn't going to happen in 1 year. It's going to be, you know, several years, several, you know, 100,000 miles, but that will happen, and then you can cut your bead on your tire and really have some issues. But I just remembered that part about the rim flange and just kind of inspecting that when you're changing your tires. So again, hopefully we answered any questions you've got, you know, about the wheel basics. Hopefully we can help you out in the future when you're looking for wheels. Any questions, give us a call.